Dear students and dear colleagues, welcome at this webinar on scientific writing, hosted by Veterinary Medicine Department of Sassari, with the PhD course in Veterinary Science of Sassari, and also with a collaboration of the Department of Veterinary Medicine of Bari, the Department of Excellence for 2018. I'm Antonio Varcasia, and I'm here to present our host, Professor Otranto. Domenico is included in a very special chart, which is that of the top Italian scientists in the world. And this chart is based only on H-index. And he shared his position with some renowned scientists like Ilaria Capua, with a very impressive number, with H-index of 65 and more than 54 papers published only this year. He is also the president of the World Veterinary Parasitology Association and past president of the European College of Veterinary Parasitology. I can continue this way for many times because he has done a lot of things, but I just wanted to add that he is for me a mentor, but most important of everything I have already said, he is a very good friend. So please welcome Domenico and welcome at this lesson on scientific writing. Thank you. For everybody that is following us by Facebook, you can write your questions and I will share with our host and he will reply. Ciao.
Però lui c'è proprio un divulgatore scientifico.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me? Yes, I guess so.
Please switch off the microphone, everybody in the room.
Okay. Good morning. That's really a pleasure for me being here and to share with you this morning.
Morning. I like to speak.
Sorry? I suggest to mute your microphone, Nicola. Hi. So this is a nice opportunity, occasion to discuss with you about some experience I have in writing a scientific article. And as mentioned in the title, it's from the reasons of writing these scientific articles to the structure. So it will be really a practical course. First of all, I would like to thank all colleagues who are online, mainly those from Iran. That is like a second home for me. I'm visiting professor in Ramadan, and I feel very close to all of them. And importantly, I would like to thank also Antonio Varcasia. He's also a friend, really a friend, and also a great scientist, but he's a friend. So you see, we met some months ago with here in Bari, also with a great mentor for all scientists and an important person for divulgation of science, Piero Angela. So the first thing I would like to mention is that I come from the University of Bari, and I live in Torre Mare, a wonderful place, very peaceful place, where also very inspiring, where to work and where to work in collaboration with so many young students over the years. That is strange for me to deliver this talk alone, because my experience in writing scientific articles is also it comes from my experience in the interaction with so many people during the years, so many students, so many colleagues, and so I'm really proud and happy to have this international team with me. They really make the difference in understanding, in learning how to write scientific article, because it's just a matter of experience. And this is just a matter of experience I will share with you today, but you may also follow us in our Instagram account. And I suggest you to follow it right now, because you will participate to our interactive quiz soon during the lecture. So please just register in Parasitarian if you have not done it previously. So, as mentioned before, writing is just something really personal. It reflects our personal view, our own history, our provenance, and even the political and social sensitivity, the cultural background we have, our motivation, why we write it, the subject that we work in science. I want just to mention that this way of writing, or what I'm talking about, applies to different disciplines. We need a good friend, good researcher, many students for sharing the writing time. And I used to write quite a lot with good music, like Goldberg Variation, which is a work for harpsichord by Bach, which consisted of an aria of a set of 30 variations. Therefore, that's it's the meaning. We may have, according to the studies, according to the paper we are going to write, a different subjects, but the structure of the paper and of the manuscript, because paper, we say paper soon after it is published, it's almost the same. And I had also some experience as editor-in-chief of Medical and Veterinary Entomology for something like 10 years. So it comes also from my experience. What I'm telling you it comes not only as me as scientist, but also as editor-in-chief. So the first question, why should we write a scientific article? Why? For many reasons. That's a duty, or it's just an obligation, or for fame, or for wealth. But in my opinion, it is mainly, or it should be mainly, a pleasure. For sure, not for money. We do not eat for money, even if it's important for our academic career. It's important because as researchers, we need to communicate our science and our research and the results of our research, the results in the laboratory, in the field. And also it starts from the needs to put order in our life, in nature. Just consider, for example, Linnaeus, who with his work, seminal work, he put like an order in our life. He make us understand how to classify what we see around us. From a philosophically standpoint, we may say that we need to have an aim, but we also need to understand the relationship among animals and how the phenotypic characters are transmitted. That someone else, like Darwin, wrote an important, a seminal book on the origin of species. And then how to establish the relationship and how to this relationship occur at cellular level. Some colleagues understood the structure and wrote a manuscript that was just 2 pages manuscript on the molecular structure of nucleic acids. They were Watson and Crick. And in the same article in 1953 in Nature, also Maurice Wilkins contributed to the discovery of the structure of DNA. So all of them had a Nobel Prize gained a Nobel Prize in physiology and in medicine. Then how to translate and how to make this knowledge about genetics available, and how can we translate in a practical, applicative way? Karen Mullis wrote an article on PCR. And you understand very well how important were these articles for our lives. It's not just publish or perish. Publish or perish is something that we are quite forced by the academics, but it's really important to understand that if we do not do it in a correct way, and if we do not do it with passion, we will not succeed in doing that, and we will not produce a very good results or good studies, good manuscripts. So where to publish, we will need another lecture for making you understand how to choose an article, in journal instead another one. And this is not the aim of our study. But for sure, publishing is one of the keys for the success in academics, in your life, in our lives. So the scientist reasons for writing a scientific paper. The first one is to inform peers about the important issue and to document the approach used. It's to communicate about your daily activity in the lab, in the field, and how to start. In my opinion, the first thing is to know the audience and write for that specific audience. Then to know the community who study a particular subject. I am a parasitologist, so I work in the field of parasitology. Read particular journals, and then study a selection of highly regarded papers and instructions for authors for key journals. You choose key journals based on impact factor, on the audience, on the approach that you use in your manuscript or in your research. There are many reasons for doing, or many way of choosing a journal. The style of a journal when you write, or the style of the manuscript when you write it, needs to be clear and concise. And this is not so easy for Italians. My manuscripts at the beginning were so long and terribly boring that I had to work a lot on cutting it, on the way, on the style. And I profited by the experience of also many colleagues from UK or United States who are more concise, and from this standpoint are much better than Italians. But they have not fantasy, which is something that is really important, and we will discuss about that. Good English is critical in science writing, and sometimes we need to have a proofreading by a native speaker. That's something that the reviewers ask us when we submit the manuscript to a journal. So the quality of the writing reflects the quality of the research. you should try, or I should try, so I will talk in my experience, I will say in my experience, we need to try to be not convoluted, we need a direct prose, and we need to make every word count and do not use extra word, overwording. So we need also to be very accurate in reference formatting, because an editor, at least I did like that, when an editor just try to evaluate at the first look, the manuscript submitted, just check the references, the abstracts, and see, okay, these researchers did a good job, they are very accurate. Now we see the contents. Each word is a treasure with the greatest impact on the reader mind, so do not be overwording. The structure of the title of the article of the manuscript is quite easy. It's like a story. We have a title, authors and affiliations, the abstract and keywords, an introduction, then the material and methods, the results. Sometimes we may merge results and discussions, so in short communications. Therefore, the discussions and the conclusions, and the acknowledgement and the references. So we may use different kind of titles for your article, for your manuscript. It depends on the journal and on your style, on the editorial style, but also on your own experience. You may use indicative studies titles. For example, in the indicative, you have a subject of a paper, but you do not give the results. I give you an example like that: a new vaccine against human leishmaniasis. So you put, that's an indicative title, because you say that this is a subject, but you do not write in the title whether this study was successful or not. So it's just indicative or informative. You may say efficacy of a subunit vaccine against human leishmaniasis. Or again, a question type title: is a subunit vaccine really effective against human leishmaniasis? Or main subtitle type B, like that, we may have different parts, different sections of a whole article on the control of canine leishmaniasis or human leishmaniasis. And so this may be like new vaccines against human leishmaniasis, first part, subunit vaccine. This is an example. And please, again, follow us in Parasiterranean Instagram, because we are going to have the first interactive quiz. The first one is coming. And that's really a pleasure for me to have as an example this article, because I will show you practically in a practical way what I'm saying with an article, so that at the end of this talk this afternoon you may write your article as well. And this article was published some months ago in Veterinary Parasitology by some colleagues of us, some students, I'm also here, that the title is Transmammary Transmission of Troglostrongyus brevior feline lungworm, a lesson from our gardens. This was made during the COVID lockdown at my house and the house of some technicians by many colleagues, and the first two authors are here. Marcos from Brazil, is a PhD student from Brazil, and Jairo Mendoza Roldan from Colombia. Morning. And other colleagues that are all listed here. including colleagues from Israel and from other universities, University of Bari, Messina, and so on. And I will explain you also the rationale for the naming and the authors. The first quiz is coming, so please just check in Parasiterranean Instagram account. And the question is, possiamo andare? Un secondo solo. Which of the previous titles, in your opinion, is this? Transmammary transmission of Troglostrongilus brevior feline lungworm, a lesson from our gardens. I will give you something like 1 minute for replying, and we'll see. Possiamo andare? Sì, un secondo. If you did it, we can continue while you are thinking about the first answer. Okay. And we may, yes, okay. Then something that is also important is the authors. You may find it now in Instagram. I will ask Airo to prepare the next one because it's already ready to go. Thank you. You know, the Southern Americans are a little bit lazy, so they are not so fast as Italians. So we will continue with the authors and the affiliations. The authors affiliations, we have the credit for the authors should be put, I mean, colleagues and collaborators should be put as authors based on their contribution of each researcher to the work presented. The drafting of paper or revising it critically, I mean that the authors need to have all reviewed the manuscript and accept the final consensus version. So you must be aware of the content of the manuscript and you need to have approved it. Also, the multiple affiliation is possible if you are linked, like in my case, with the Hamadan University in Iran. You have to put double affiliation, and for me is really an honor and pleasure. And authors must also disclose the sources of funding for their research and relevant competing interests. So, this is the first page. These are the authors. And as mentioned before, just to make you understand what we did during the COVID lockdown year, we just tried to work on a parasite that is Troglostrongilus brevior, which is a parasite, is a feline lungworm, and on the way of transmission of these parasites through the transmammary transmission of the parasites from the mother to kittens. And then also we investigated the occurrence of these parasites in other potential paratenic hosts that are lizards and mice. So something that is really important to know is that when we do research, we do not need. It depends on the research, but sometimes it may happen that you can do research just in your garden. You may have different opportunities for doing that by collecting feces of cats, for example, or collecting lizards. The most important thing is that you have an idea, and the idea is when you do research is the most successful, maybe the most successful key for something that may be very easy. It's something that was in our garden, and we were forced in that occasion by the lockdown to do not go outside our gardens. So we decided to do this by investigating something that was very interesting. The abstract and the keywords are also important in writing a manuscript. That's like a shorter version of the paper. They are just keywords because they are the most important words for defining your manuscript. And this is the most important because it's available by abstracting services like PubMed. So you check just Troglostrongylus and Parathenicos or snails. They are to be very short. And this is the first way for choosing whether to read the full paper. I would say that abstracts are really crucial and important. And also when you write the abstract, you need to have some structure in the abstract. So the structure of the abstract just overlaps that of the manuscript. We have a background, a rationale, an objective of the manuscript. Then you briefly summarize the procedures. Then you write the results, the main results, and just one line for the conclusions and main future implications. We have the next slide. Yeah. So the first sentence was, you will see, even for people who do not understand anything or it's not their field, the parasitology, you may just check the structure of the abstract. We were talking about the transmammary transmission of a parasite from the cat from the dam to the kittens. So we start with an introduction for people who do not know about. Feline landworms are such as Elostrongylus abstrusus and Troglostrongylus brevior are snail-borne pathogens causing respiratory distress in domestic cats. Parathenic hosts, such as rodents and reptiles, have also been implicated in the epidemiology of the parasite. So in 2 lines, in 2 sentences, you define the whole problem. Then the rationale, which is really important for understanding afterwards the objective of your study. So you started in saying that we do not have something that we need with our manuscript to address. We do not have a scientific information that you need to address. Although Elostrongylus abstrusus has been recognized for a long time as the most prevalent landworm among cats worldwide, Troglostrongylus brevior is a major concern in kittens. So kittens are mainly are the main also, or at least we have a high prevalence of infection in kittens. But kittens do not feed with snails. So something is strange. probably there is another way of transmission of this parasite. Bearing in mind the disease due to Glossodius brevi occurs mainly in pediatric patients younger than 6 months of age, the diagnosis of these parasites in 2 kittens presenting severe respiratory disease from the garden of one of the authors inspired us to investigate the potential routes of transmission through Glossodius brevi in domestic rat cats. So it's so easy. You can do it whenever. You just need the idea. And therefore, to investigate the potential routes of transmission of Glossodius brevi in domestic cats is our objective. How did we do it? We do it by collecting from queens feces and then from kittens feces, and also by collecting snails and also Faratenicos in the gardens. So this is the procedures, the material methods. And in yellow, you see the results for the collection of feces or of samples from feces, and also the collection of adults from the lungs of animals that died following the infection. So we did some procedures, we put information about the procedures and then the results. And we concluded that, and this is something that I like very much because I wanted to make it clear for all scientists, that during the COVID-19 lockdown, when scientists spent more time at home, we grasped the opportunity to decipher the Glossodius brevi biology and ecology, starting in a small ecological niche, such as the garden of our house. And we did it, we concluded, and we did, we found that the transmammary transmission of the Glossodius brevi in domestic cats was demonstrated, as well the role of intermediate Faratenicos, including reptiles, in the epidemiology of this infection. So this is quite important if you consider that we also gave some information about not only the results for this study, but also the approach to research. Just encouraging all young scientists, all researchers in doing research, even in bad conditions like those that we are living during the pandemic. And although the first section, this is the first section of the article, I write the abstract usually last. This is the last section for us. It's quite important that is the last section because we may need some changes in the structure of the abstract. So I suggest now there is the second quiz that is already published in Parasitarian in Instagram account. You may answer the abstract, about the abstract and the structure. So the question is, which of these combinations of these structures are is more appropriate to follow for an abstract, but also to follow for a manuscript? You may have A, B, on C. You are answering correctly. I can see it. Great. The answer is correct. Thank you for doing that. Perfect. And so we can continue with that. And I'm very proud you are following me so well. We need to keep patient. This is not my best way of communication. I hate this. Really, they are here because otherwise I was feeling so stupid talking with this stupid friend of mine that is a Mac. So thank you for being here as well. So, introduction, the background. The reason for writing the background is to answer some questions. That is, why is this study of scientific interest and what is your objective? And you should consider to discuss this introduction from general to specific information. From general to specific. The first paragraph usually is and includes the background of your study. Something that someone who is not involved with the topic should know. And it's just generalist. Please consider to do not be overwordy. This is mainly for colleagues, Italian, but also Iranian colleagues. Amongst snail-borne parasites, feline landworms, superfamily Metastrongyloidea, cause minor respiratory distress in domestic wild felids, with Aerostrongyus abstrusus being the most prevalent worldwide. Very general. It introduced the reader into a context of the study. In that case, you have to cite sources as evidence for the claims you are making, and you should try to do not oversight your own articles. This is another problem for some colleagues, usually oversight their articles. But I mean, this is not the way for being successful in science. It's just a way for perceived to be successful in science. But the others will not recognize you as a good scientist. It's fine. Everybody's free in research or doing whatever. But that's my suggestion. Limit the introduction to study that relate directly to the present study, and do not be overwordy. Try to explain, and this is important. So from general to specific information, you have to go through the information, scientific information, and just to go to the nitty-gritty, to the rationale for the study, why your research is timely. And it's timely because, you see, while the role of reptiles as paratenic host has been demonstrated for Aerostrongyus abstrusus, no information is available for Aerostrongyus brevior. This could be due to the scant number of parasitological studies available for reptiles, in spite of their role as source of many zoonotic agents. But for sure, we need to have we have some ground for starting our work, and for saying that we need to have a study. And we need to have the study also because for Aerostrongyus brevior, it was hypothesized the lactation transmission. But there are not readable data on the transmission of this landworm in kittens. So these are something that we miss to science. We miss some information that we miss And so we need to address it with your manuscript, with your research. All sentences should be nicely linked to each other, and the reader should read it as a whole story. And therefore, parasitology, which is based, therefore, the aim of our study is to further investigate the potential routes of transmission. This is the aims. The transmission of Pteroglossogius brevior in domestic cats and the epidemiological chain of the infection in parathenic intermediate hosts in the garden. So the rationale was that we didn't have this information, we had not this information, so we did that. We had this aim. In the introduction, as well as also in the conclusion, you could also put something that is really personal, something that is that you feel like something that is important for your peers, for the world, for the society. And that's why we wrote this first part before the aims about the way of doing parasitology, which is based on the observation interpretation of occasional findings. And since during the COVID-19 lockdown, we profited of the time spent at home, very boring, to examine the cheaper the epidemiological chain of Pteroglossogius occurring in small garden. So this is really important, just to explain the story of behind our work, because you have not only to convey your results and to transmit and to make people understand or know your results, but you have also to send another message, which is to encourage people, mainly young people, people coming from countries where there are not so many opportunities to do research and to pursue in research, because it's really wonderful. And you see that you have just to, from the aims, you have to smoothly move to the material methods. That's like a soft transition to the material methods. Yes, there is something strange because I cannot see the slides because it comes later. Yes. And here you see there is this there are the screen, so I have some difficulties in that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just discussing the soft transition to material methods, the timing, the animals, procedure, the animals, the procedures, the methods, the methodologies should be clearly reported in the way that another scientist could duplicate your work, but should not be repetitive of other works. So you should refer other articles if your methodology is not, unless it's original. But be careful, material methods are not merely a list of instructions as in a recipe. You have to put everything, all the information about your study and and the procedures used in your study for doing that. And another aspect that is really important is the ethical aspect. We need to have human participants. For human participants, you need the appropriate consent. And for animals, we need to have appropriate methods recognized, acknowledged. We need to have an authorization from the ethical committee of the department or the Ministry of the Health or whatever. But we need to have an ethical assessment in all manuscripts we submit. And as editor of, we did it within all instances in these material methods. I will not bore you with the information and with the data about the study we published, but for sure, in my experience as editor-in-chief of Medical and Veterinary Entomology, I had something that I had some nice story to tell you. There was a manuscript that was submitted for publication in Medical and Veterinary Entomology that dealt with the efficacy of pyrethroids for the prevention of biting of the bed bugs. And sometimes people do not have this, have not this idea about ethics. You see what I had to read in that case. The scientists tried to record the biting activity of bed bugs by using 2 persons voluntarily, which spent 5 nights in infected house. That was really incredible. They want to publish this story that is completely unethical. But the worst thing is that they remained on the beds, but did not sleep from 10 to 6 a.m. It's like a horror movie. It's something that is unbelievable. Just young or child that were in the bed laying and recording the bed bug bites. The first one. One positive. The second one. So that was the procedure. These were the methods. It's just crazy. For sure, it was rejected straight away. So be ethical and understand well what does it mean being ethical. And the results also are really important. Is not the most important, but are really important, because in the results, which is after the material methods, in the results you present your evidence, your data, the data in your experiments, following the procedures in the material methods, but you have not to interpret the data or the results. This is extremely important. You have not to interpret the results you gain. You have just to present like in a picture. And that's why you have also to select the information to include, never forgetting about the aims of your article and the title of your article. So it's transmammary transmission, intermediate and paratenic cause. So you present the results. At necropsy, adult langworms, morphologically identified as Dragostrongius brevior, and you put the reference, how you identified that, were recovered from the trachea and bronchi. Briefly, very briefly, because it's not the main goal, it's not the main result. Parasites were cylindrical and so on. As well as the intermediate and paratenic cause, we have that at artificial digestion, nematodes larvae were recovered from 2 out of, and you put the number and the percentage, cornuaspersum, which are snails, in which the parasite, the first stage larvae, developed to 3rd stage larvae, which was confirmed as troglosongius behavior by PCR. So you see, you present evidence. This is quite important, and you have to summarize this data with text, but also with tables and also with figures. But you do not have to replicate, you have not to replicate the text data presented in table and figures. It means that text should state the results and table and figure should present the results. You have to refer for sure in the text tables, you have to refer figures, you have not to repeat information in figures and in tables unless they are so important. We are going to have the third quiz. They are so important, these results and the features or the data presenting in tables, that for you would represent an important result to be discussed, the main result. So only in that case you stop some information that you will discuss about soon after. Only in that case. Otherwise, you just make a descriptive presentation of your results. And so the third quiz that we have, and is already available in the Instagram account, is data presented in the results. Which of the following the following assessment is true, is correct? A, B, or C? Data presented in the results. In a scientific article, table and or figures have not to be explained in the text, or text is more important of table and or figures, or text, tables, and figures have the same importance in presenting the results. Very, very good. Very, very good. You are answering correctly. So I'm very proud for that. And then after we put the background, the introduction, then the rationale for our study, the aims, the material methods, the results, we pass to the discussion. And you have to try to answer some easy questions. What do your results mean? The first sentence, and this is really important, is the sentence that in which you explain the overall results. Just bear in mind that you have the title of that manuscript, that you have the aims, and that you have the first part of the discussions. So all these three elements are very linked, and the first sentence of the discussion should explain or should answer the title. Do not start with just describing the results of other researchers, or just putting information about the disease. This is not important for us, and this is not what the first sentence should say. The study assessed the transmammary transmission of troglosongius behavior in kittens, as well as the epidemiologic chain of the infection in parasitic rats, lizards, and intermediate host corneospersum snails, that may occur in a garden. In this first sentence, you explain the whole results. You explain your achievements. In addition, this is the first report of lizards as potential pathogenic cause for this parasite. This is the second important achievement you have. And while discussing the results, you should also provide evidence about why these results differ or support other results. And in this case, we have this transmission pathway was previously suggested in a kitten that was found positive to adult nematodes in the trachea at the necropsy examination, and that died 25 days after it was born from a queen positive for fecal test of Orthigosongus brevior. So you have to support other results or differ, how to differ the support, so you have to discuss, as well as which are the main achievements of your study. This should be something like after discussion of all results, and you should explain that the main achievements reported support, firstly, the hypothesis that this parasite could be vertically transmitted through the transmammary route. Secondly, the role of intermediate and pathogenic cause in the epidemiology of the disease in cats. And third, the importance of observation parasitology in studying any event that occurs in small ecological niches such as the home of our gardens. This is really important because sometimes as researchers, we try to find incredible projects, or just we look for some research that is super fancy, very expensive, but sometimes when you work in the field of biology, when you work in biology, when you work in a lab, you may have a very stupid, easy idea, never stupid, easy idea that may make the difference. This is much more important and interesting in my opinion. So you have to interpret your results in light of other studies and highlight the original information you gain. By providing accurate citation as evidence of the claims you are making. So writing it in the way that you may write that although cats usually do not feed on snails, but rather on pathogenic causes such as rats and lizards. And so you put the references. But most importantly, what are the future implications of our study? That's usually the last sentence from small and large perspective. The first for our study could be that, moreover, this study brings important knowledge on the epidemiological chain of Troglostrongyus brevior transmission in domestic cats, drawing attention for the need of preventive measures such as early diagnosis and suitable age-related treatment of pregnant queens and kittens. But it's also important, and this is a large perspective, that in parasitology, constant interactions amongst hosts, parasites, and their vectors occur in small ecological niches, such as a home garden. And the importance of observational approaches should be prompted to further investigate scientific events that will be further confirmed under experimental conditions. As new scientific discoveries require time and reproducible confirmatory results, very often we rely much more on laboratory-based observations that on events that occur in nature. And for sure, during the COVID-19 lockdown, we had to change our mind, also our approach, not only to our lives, but also to the way of doing research for surviving, because doing research is not just merely work, but it means survive in a good way so that you are doing something good in your life for peers and for future generations. And that's why we have to publish, because writing manuscript means to write something that people in the future will read, and we may help people in the future. Suggest future direction is really important. It's really important, and sometimes we may make the difference. For example, you know that some years ago we had malaria outbreak in province of Taranto, and immediately the right xenophobic party in Italy said that, just as a publicity, that this infection was brought by the by immigrants. So our first, with some colleagues, our first reaction was to write something against this by demonstrating that it was not true, by providing information and by providing evidence for our statement, and by assessing these in a very clear way, and by giving also some hints, some suggestions on how to manage and how to control the imported malaria cases, but definitely we assessed that migrants were not the cause. So you see that in that case, also in that case, we as scientists had the opportunity to make the truth clear also for the population, for the liars, for people who do not know anything about migrants, but are afraid, like in that period, in this specific period, of foreigners, of migrants, and so on. So we have to do it in our conclusions, in our manuscript, in the conclusions, after having discussed the evidence for our reasons and for our assessments. And the discussion are also really important because, as mentioned in my previous slides, we have to consider that we need to have some fantasy, some creativity. Albert Einstein said that logic will get you from A to B, and it is important, logic, for material methods, for the results, for the interpretation of our results, but imagination will take you everywhere. Imagination will make us aware of our role as researchers in interpreting the data we have, we find, we observe, we report, we write, we give evidence for. Then another section, another important part of the manuscript is acknowledgement, where we have to acknowledge the assistance received, and also data analysis, literature searching, supply of materials, and also the fund of the funds or the companies or the bodies, institutional bodies which funded our results. References is the section which we prepare and we put in alphabetic order or numeric list or references that have been reported and been listed in our manuscript. And therefore, after saying that, we may start writing a scientific article. Writing a scientific article, as mentioned before, is something that you can do everywhere in the world, anytime you like, when you feel more comfortable, but for sure you have to start doing it very, very soon. You may do it while staying on the sea, just waiting for something or a bus, or while cooking a feijoada, cutting onions, like with Felipe there, or with colleagues from Brazil, Australia, with your parrot. You can do it whenever you like. In Greece, with Odile Ben, while waiting for field activities, or again during a travel in a boat, or just during a daily work activity, daily working day. Now I'm working with Ranju, who wrote a wonderful article on Wolbachia, a review article on Wolbachia, and we are doing it in an episode. We say that is a production Ranjunex. We also have like Netflix, and we also have a music of that, but it's just a funny story. But something that is important in the preparation of manuscript is that before you start writing, you need to be absolutely clear about your message. A scientific paper fails if it is not clear in conveying the author's findings. You have to define what your paper means and discuss with co-authors, titles, contents. Discuss not too much, as Italians do, but discuss with co-authors. And just consider that if sometimes it happens that you do not have important results, or if you feel that you do not have interesting results, in other words, if you are thinking about that, but you have nothing interesting to say, just consider to do not say nothing. So you do not, I suggest you to do not write anything. Just go to the sea or think about something else, but just do not write something that is unuseful or is not important for you and for peers. So after this kind of presentation, very general, we should start writing the outlines of the manuscript. I usually say to my students that we need to write the outlines very fastly. They always complain with that. They always say, yeah, you say that is fast, but just try to do like in this page, on this page. Introduction, you have to write 5 sentences of introduction. 20 minutes, no more. 20 minutes. If you have the data, 20 minutes. General context. From general context to the nitty-gritty, to the aims. General context, focus on your context, focus on what will be the area dealing with your paper, then the rationale, then the aims of your article. 5 sentences: general context, our context, the gaps, the rationale, the aims. 5, 4, 5, 6. Then the materials. Just consider that the title, you see here, title, has to be the aim of the study, mainly if is a illustrative title. So the title should be the aims. Just do not put aims different than title, because otherwise it means that you were wrong with the titles or with the aims. Then in the methods, you put the procedures, the methods, the data analysis, the ethics, whatever. You describe how you did it, and then the results. By describing, present, showing, through the usage and of tables, of figures, and of text, at the same level, at the same dignity, the same importance. Do not interpret your results. Do not put the interpretation of the results in the results, of the results in the results, because the interpretation of the results will be in the discussion. Discussion section, which they explain what these results mean, with a general sentence summarizing what you found, and by describing each step of your results in the context of the information and of the literature, with a clear message for futures. This is quite important. Just consider that you have to describe main findings as first sentence, then organize these results in blocks and discuss these blocks based on the results, by avoiding cliché like more research is needed. That's typical. Okay, if it's needed more research and you would like to say that it's needed more research, do it. It's needed. The research will be needed everywhere, every time. Always will be needed more research. So it's a stupid thing, but we always put it. I don't know. It's a fancy probably, but so before continuing, I would like to ask Antonio Varcasia, Professor Varcasia, if everything is going well and the connection and the
yes, Domenico,
how it's going on, how it's working.
I think very fine. I have many comments from Facebook, and everybody is happy, and the connection is very good. If you look at the chat, there are already some questions. But
yes, but I cannot. Sorry, Antonio. I cannot, because right now I have 2-3 computers, and most importantly, I have the stage. So when I have the stage, was just a technical question. Thank you very much, and we continue with this presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Perfecto. So soon after this first part, we are going to conclude this discussion, but I want just to show you something that is important for explaining how to prepare the outlines. You should write each of the 4 sections in the outlines in about 20 minutes. Check the details, only shaping the manuscript, and you should use the blocks, the paragraphs of the manuscript as basic building blocks. See, No? So just try to use blocks in your manuscript and make topic sentences short and direct. Build the paragraph from the ideas introducing the topic sentence and make the flow of individual sentences follow a logical sequence. Human intraocular filariasis caused by the Dirofilaria species nematode in Brazil. We just received a nematode from Brazilian colleagues, and this nematode was in the eye of a young guy in Paraguay. He worked for the electricity company, and molecularly, morphologically, was very close to Dirofilaria immitis, which is one of the main filaroid causing myiasis in the Americas. Here we have another species, repens. But molecularly, it was completely different. Then we investigated the possibility that it was a new species, just with one specimen, and it was published in Emerging Infection Disease. So you see how we started the introduction. Zoonotic filariasis from general to specific. Zoonotic filariasis are caused by nematodes of the superfamily Filariidae and are transmitted by flat-feeding arthropods. Full stop. We do not refer it because it's basic, it's very easy, but within the taxonomic group, nematodes of the genus Dirofilaria are among the most common agents infecting humans, from general to, by narrowing, to more specific. Then, the main two species, Filarioids, Dirofilaria genus, the main two species of zoonotic concern are Dirofilaria immitis, which causes canine cardiopulmonary disease, and Dirofilaria repens, which is usually found in subcutaneous tissues. And so we continued like that until we found we have our aim, but just consider that usually writing is an interactive process. And while we write the results of our study, we may find something that was unexpected, and this is something that probably would never think about when we started writing, like to find a new species of Dirofilaria instead just describing a species of filaroid which was found in the eye of a young guy in Paraguay, Sorry. So writing the result section of a paper is the best way to discover the analysis and figures that still need to be done. It's the best way for understanding your results. And it's an interactive process. Also, when you write, for example, tables and figures, and this is something, some hints quite interesting, you have to write a caption. The caption should be self-explanatory, which means that it should contain sufficient information so that a reader can understand the table or figure without reference to the text. So when you have a caption and a table, you have to consider that if you do not have the table, but only the caption, you should build or you should structure the table based on the information you have in the caption, and vice versa. If you have just the table but not the caption, you should be able to write the information present in the table in the caption. So we say that it should be self-explanatory. I suggest to do not leave caption writing to the end of the project. Write captions when you organize your results, because you need them for the preparation of results. And also, when I said before that you have to avoid some cliché, you have to demonstrate, provide evidence for what you are saying. And rather than telling the reader that the result is interesting or significant, show them how it's interesting or significant. For instance, rather than saying the large difference in mean size between population C and population D is particularly interesting, right? Mean size generally varied among population by only a few centimeters, but mean size in population C and D differed by 25 centimeters. You are not saying, you are not writing that the information is interesting, because for you is interesting, but not for me, for example. It's not interesting. 25 centimeters is nothing. For me, it's much more important, I don't know, 50 centimeters in different mean size of population C and D. But if you provide evidence of such a difference, you make the reader understand how important. You make a process of reading a manuscript not a passive process of information, but an active process. You make him convincing by breaking the screen or the paper they are reading. So it's an active process. You have to keep your style as simple as possible. Short and easy words and short sentences, because some journals ask for a glossary, and that's really important, very easy, very simple. And you should try to use third person from an impersonal form, impersonal, instead of the first. The results of this study, for example, suggest or indicate that rather than our study, our results suggest, indicate that, first of all, our results, they are not our results. The results of any scientific research, when they are delivered, when you have evidence of results, they become our results, the results of the community, but not the results of the authors. So third person is much better. And then the final stage, leave your manuscript to mature for 1 week before working again on it. Start cleaning up the prose. Leave it. So you finish the results, the study immediately. You finish the result, your manuscript, and then you leave it for 1 week before you read it again. And sometimes it happens to me very often that when I read it after 1 week, or even after 24 hours, I read it, oh cavolo, did I write this? It's incredible. That's incredible. That's so bad. So you have to give yourself enough time to proofread and correct your paper. Possibly early in the morning is the best time. And then the final stage, after you finish it, let a friend or colleague read your draft, listen to what they say, possibly. Sometimes it's difficult, but you should try to list them. And make sure that each sentence presents one or more clear ideas. After having write the first draft, the consensus write of the manuscript, you have to submit it. You have to submit to any journal, but for sure we have peer reviewing process. You have to review the author's guidelines for the journal, because we do not like as editor to have manuscripts submitted with in a superficial, written in a superficial way, because the way in which the articles are presented, are written, also tell you about the accuracy that the authors put in writing the article. Text pages and tables have to be consecutively, numbered consecutively, referred in the text, so you ask yourself, yes, did we refer all of them? Read the title and the headings of each table. Caption should be self-explanatory. Carefully read your final typescript at least twice. And the second time, the third time, you have to read it with a loud voice. This is really important, because if you read it keeping silent in your mind is different than if you read it a loud voice. Then you have the online submission. Prepare the files according to the instructions of authors. Keep a copy of your file for your file inventory in the working papers, submit the papers, and finally submit the manuscript and celebrate. Celebrate in the best way you may, in the best way you like to celebrate, but celebrate. Here there are our some students and colleagues celebrating with the Jerusalem. They are not so good dancer as me, but they are fine. So, and finally, you have to write the cover letter. The cover letter. The cover letter is also important because it makes you understand how to present. You have not to rewrite everything in the cover letter. You cannot lose the time of an editor, but just be very straight, very clear, very precise, and short. To Professor Peter Tetz. Dear Professor Tetz, following the pre-submission inquiry, please find there with attached the review article entitled The Prevention of Canine Leishmaniasis and its Impact on Human Health, to be considered for publication in PLOS Neglected Tropical Disease. First sentence. Second, we do believe, you have to explain why it's worth to be submitted for a review to the peers and to the reviewers. So you have to explain why your paper is timely and why it's important that their journal publish your paper. We do believe, not we believe, we do believe, cavolo, we do believe the topic proposed is of interest if we really believe it, otherwise do something different. To your journal, since canine leishmaniasis by Leishmania infantile is among the most important vector-borne parasitic zoonosis affecting dogs from almost all continents. We reviewed available strategies to control the disease in endemic areas, vaccination, use of insecticides, environmental repellents on dogs, and discussed the future perspective in the field. Therefore, the last, just bye-bye. We look forward to receiving the opinion of your advisors on our manuscripts. Thank you for your editorial work, because we work as editors very often for few money or for nothing. So we are doing a service to the scientific community. Best regards, and you sign with your name. The manuscript revision is another really important moment. Is really important because you have to deal immediately with any request from the editors. Okay? Jairo, Marcos, is it okay? 48 hours. And it makes sense because the editor, after 48 hours, remember what he said, what he did, the manuscript that he handled, and it's better, much better, if you have not to run many experiments or it's just minor revisions, to send it straight away, because you could have acceptance without revisions, which is quite difficult and unusual. So you do not need further actions. I think that it happened to me once, or minor or major revisions. Then you have to modify or rewrite sentences or sections as necessary, prepare a cover with a rebuttal letter with the revised version, thank the editor and referees for their help, and enclose a list of substantial changes made in the response to their suggestions. So you have to write and say, you say like that, I modify like that, I think like that, and so it's quite important. Or you may have also the rejection. You may have a manuscript rejected. We have a long experience on that because it's too specialized or outside the scope of the journal. And so you may send it to another journal, first modifying the style, or they say that it's too long and need to be changed, it needs of changes. So you may have different things or different issues to address. You should, these are some practical suggestions. You should avoid the abbreviations by writing out the full words, the contractions, the direct quote. And you have to remind that you are the responsible for the basics of the language use, because your supervisor is not an English language teacher. And the more energy he spends on correcting English usage, the less remains for issues of contents. So good writing is rewriting. You must make efforts as editing, rewriting, fine-tuning before you give to the manuscript to read to anyone else. So this is quite important. You have to be convinced about the results of your manuscript. Because, you know, a good paper never come out perfect at the first time. And anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. This is quite important. And you have to give yourself enough time to work, to learn, to improve, to be passionate about what you do, because writing is a process. And you will be fully satisfied with your process, with your results, as in this case, the Colombian and the Brazilian guys. Papers written so well that they flow and resonate will influence the readers more than the equivalent message presented in a form that is merely clear. They will not forget your paper because it was good food for their mind and for their desire for knowledge. This is something very important. We must always improve to have a perfect product that will be read by peers everywhere in our world. And it will happen forever. And this is the only opportunity we have for doing that. And this, I think, is the main message for our seminar today. And I'm happy to have been invited, because, as mentioned, this slide is a real essence of the scientist's life, and this is the only opportunity. You may do it, you can do it, you have to do it, and I'm ready to have some questions if there is any, or some clarification. Thank you.
Grazie, Domenico. Thank you, Domenico. And yes, there are some questions from the floor. You can also read it in your chat. And before, I would like to ask you the question. The first question is for me, and it's about your first time, and possibly how it was, and if you have success at the first time, because my first time publishing was not so good, and maybe this could be something fine for the young scientists that are following us. Please. Okay.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
So you asked me about my first time?
Yes.
In writing a scientific article?
Of course.
So that's a tricky question, because my first time was really bad, and it lasted for 8 years, my first times, because I got long time, I had to learn by myself writing, and I'm far from being good writer, but at least I can tell you that it was really, really difficult. I didn't know English at all, so I had to work a lot also on that. I think that if I did it, everybody can do it.
Thank you. And okay, can you read the question in your chat? Or do you want that I just read for you?
Just one moment. Can you read them, because I cannot see?
Yes, there are some. I will start from the last, because it's also from a student of veterinary medicine here in Sassari, Ginevra, but it's something that looks a little bit off topic, but it's fine. Can you give some advice about writing a good degree thesis? About writing thesis?
Yes, writing thesis should be like writing a scientific article, in my opinion. I mean, the structure is very close and it's the first time people or students have the opportunity to write something of scientific. So I think that if we do not need to have long thesis written, but just short and well clearly presented results, because a thesis is the first experience for a student to do it.
So thank you. This is from Facebook also. I have another question, which is for my PhD students and my group, but also for many others. What are the most important errors that makes Italian scientists writing articles? Because this is a very trendy topic on reply of editors, and I would like to hear your impression as also editors on this. Thank you.
Yeah, grazie. The main problems are related with the fact that we are a little bit too long. in description. We do not go directly on the most important part, on the most relevant part of the results or the most relevant view of a research. We try to do too much, but to be honest, the sentences have to be very clear and simple, easy, because English and people usually is very easy. And they are a little bit less complicated than us, in a way that they discuss, yes, but we have a different culture, you know, we have different culture.
We use too many words, probably.
Too many words for saying often nothing.
Yes, so there are two questions that are quite similar, also from Facebook, from Marcus, and also from William. Can you please give us some instructions about a review paper?
For a review paper, before we have a literature review papers, but usually journals that publish literature review papers are not so many, because also in that case for review, given that the science is going through to be more specialized, we need to review some specific topics. So also for review papers, you should start from a very general background, just explaining the idea, the general idea, and then go with and then discuss in an easy way that could be understandable also from people who do not work on that, the main points, the main issues that concern the topic you are discussing. I suggest, for example, to read some review articles in Friends in Parasitology, which is the best journal for parasitologists, for understanding this kind of approach.
Thank you. And there is Anna, if you want, you can switch on the microphone and do it by yourself, because you are in a classroom. I just okay, you are.
Yeah.
You are
Hi. I'd like to know, that's a question that people often ask me. Sometimes I help to revise papers at the university. Is which papers they should put on the introduction and which ones they should choose for the discussion. Sometimes they don't know exactly how to balance these, which ones they can repeat or use only in one part or the other.
So that's really nice, because you have to try to do not repeat the concept that you had in the introduction. And this, Antonio, is another problem from Italians, because they usually repeat the concept in introduction and in the discussions, but you may refer again these manuscripts in the discussion, but with other data or for supporting your results. And in the introduction and in discussion, you should refer papers that are primary papers. For example, the description of a biological life cycle that was made in 1825, you have to report 1825, but possibly you should refer more recent papers, more recent articles. This is quite important because you know, Hannah, that in 50 years, probably the 2020 manuscripts will be a little bit outdated. But our ideas, how we did them now, are completely original and they remain. That's why they remain forever in the literature. And that's why it's the sense of, this is the sense, in my opinion, the essence of being researchers. We do something that in 100 years will remain. We may have daughters, sons, so on, and in 3 generations, the grandson will forget about us, but not through the manuscript, through the papers, through our science. This is important. And our science is something that makes everybody free, despite their provenience or the color of their skin or the orientation or their religion and everything. So this is the essence of being a researcher. Sorry, I probably answering the first part of the sentence of my talk to you, my answer to your question. The second part was a little bit out of the context. Sorry.
Okay, there are some questions from Facebook from our friends from Iran. There is one interesting comment about Ali Alajan.
Who?
Ali Alajan that says, writing a thesis dissertation is a different story. It's like writing a novel, while writing an article is like writing a short story. And that could be true. And then Mohammed Salimi.
But I would answer that
Yes.
it's much better to write an article because time is a matter. Nobody will read, or at least I'm hardly read the long novels.
And there is another question from Iran, which is Mohammed Salimi, which asks, how do we explain the subject of an article in the scientific community to the general public so that it can be understood? So how can translate to everyday people our scientific article to general public? This is something that many editors are asking now, you know, to make a summary for general public.
With simple words.
Yeah, but
you should answer, Antonio, because you are a journalist. You have been also journalist, not only a scientist.
I can reply to Mohammed that we should try to get out from our lab and to explain our research, because also in these days we say a lot of fake news on Facebook and about COVID, and we have to reply to people of the street with science, explaining science in very few words. And Ludwig, how long we can spend for a manuscript for each part? This
from Vietnam. Yes. How long? It depends. If I ask some PhD students, I would say long time. Others, short time. It depends. It really depends. I would suggest, if you have all the results, you have to be focused on your results. Stay after half a day writing the outlines, make everything clear in the outlines with a few sentences, and you have in this way the overall view of your article. Then you start writing it better. But I suggest you to do it as soon as possible. And Antonio knows very well this, because I'm a little bit terrible. I push everybody in doing like that. It depends also from your priorities, your passion, what you do, no?
Yeah, Fahad, you are in the classroom, so you can switch on your video and audio and make the question to the professor.
Okay. Hi, Professor. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. I really admired that. My name is Fahad and I'm a PhD student at University of Sarsari working with Professor Varkasia. My question is regarding review as I'm doing work on that. While reviewing many papers, I came across a word known as meta-analysis. So what is the difference between a systemic review and meta-analysis? Can we do this in any specific subject or in likewise in parasitology?
You are asking me if review based on meta-analysis, if there is any specific important subject. Is
Yes.
that?
Yes. And what's
you are from Iran?
No, I'm from Pakistan.
From Pakistan. So that's the same. It applies also to Pakistan, because for some regions of some countries, there are so many good scientific articles written in the country language, in all language, no? And sometimes is not available to the scientific community. So I will choose the subject based for sure on your interest, on the interest and general interest of your topic, but meta-analysis based review article should be mainly done for those in those countries where the literature review are written, or articles are written mainly in the national idiom. So these are some criterion, probably are a little bit vague, but it depends really on your experience, your country, your topic, because there are very good scientists all over the world, for example in Russia or in China, but they write or they wrote for a long time in their own language, and this is not available to literature. So for Pakistan, it applies. My answer, I think it's quite appropriate, and I hope you are happy with that.
Thank you very much.
There is another question from Facebook, from Donato Magista. Probably I missed something, but nothing was said on ethics in scientific publishing. In my opinion, this point should be stressed a lot when speaking about writing scientific articles. Thanks.
Yeah, probably I was too short on that, but I mentioned that we need to be very conscious about which are the requirements from journals in publishing the manuscripts, and one of the most important is ethics. Ethics for research in human medicine, in animal medicine, we need a consent for owners, for veterinary, or a patient consent form for human patients. And that's not only an aspect of ethics, but ethics also implies that the researcher is very strict with his results or her results, is very strict and is confident with them. You cannot publish something that for which you are not definitely sure, or for what you are not really confident with, because you may also publish it. There are so many journals, very, I would say, fake journals. Paying them, you may publish. You may be also in PubMed, but it does not make the value of a scientist. I always say to my students, to my collaborators and colleagues, that publishing is easy. It's difficult to publish for a long time, high standard, and to be recognized. So I guess that one paper less, but more robust paper is much better than 10 manuscripts, 10 papers published, but failed in results and in conclusions. Because I have also colleagues, I do not read at all the manuscript because they are boring, because they are superficial, because they do not excite my mind, my neuron. So why should I lose my time?
So thank you. There is another question from our classroom. Gael, please switch off.
Hello. Hello,
Ciao.
everyone. I'm Gaia Giovanni. I'm Antonio Vacasia's student, and this is my last month to present my thesis. I met you, Doctor, in Basilicata. It was a really beautiful experience. Now I'm having an issue regarding my thesis. It's a thesis by publication, and I'm wondering how many articles we should minimum do in order to be eligible for a thesis by publication.
PhD?
Yes.
Yes.
It depends. It depends. It depends by your supervisor. I don't want to be touching that. It depends. I usually say that people working with me has to publish at least 3 articles per year, at least. But they have to be in the same subject, within the same subject, and they also be collaborative. I mean, they may be in collaboration. It means that, as mentioned many times, also during our parasitology summer course, I remember you very well, very pleased to meet you again. Writing is just an epiphenomenon, is just the last step of doing research. But doing research, it means working together, working one each other together, and importantly, to accept one each other and to interact. So doing a group or building a group is also important. It's very difficult, but it's important. It's essential. So I would say 3 articles, 2 articles per year is fine. International journal, for sure.
Okay.
There is no rule.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So Domenico, there is another question from Zara from Morocco that is a biotechnology student and asks how we can publish our thesis, graduation thesis.
By writing it.
Writing a paper.
No. How can we publish? What does it mean?
I think that she would like to publish as an article her graduation thesis.
Graduation. If there are information that are important, that are original, she can publish it by preparing an article. It's very easy. For example, Jairo Mendoza Roldan, he came from Colombia, and he had this huge PhD work done on all ectoparasites of reptiles and amphibians, and also on the pathogen they transmit them, so transmitted by these arthropods, and he collected 5,000 from 5,000 of reptiles. So he published his huge work in 2 articles. One was in Acta Tropica, and the second one was in tick and tick-borne diseases. So he did it because they were original. And it would have been really, really, really a pity he would not have done like that. If it was just a thesis, nobody would have read his thesis. Okay.
Another question from Iran, Alireza.
Alireza, the mythic Alireza, is a close friend and a very, very nice friend of mine and of all Italians. Dimmi, Alireza.
Alireza, switch on the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have a question regarding letter to the editor type manuscripts that are not discussed in scientific communities. What are they, and why we should publish such articles, and who can do it? I recently read an article by you and Felipe Domenico on Dirophilaria hongkongensis and the way you presented your findings. I'm curious about knowing what subjects can we write about in letter to the editors. Thank you.
If you talk about that article, it was an article. I will just mention that I am a visiting professor at the Alireza institution, that is Alisina University. Alireza, I hope to be correct. But in that article, in Hamadan, in Iran, a wonderful place. And in that article, we argued about the specific, the name of this parasite. So I guess, if I understood correctly, your question is that if we work a lot on a specific topic, we are also entitled to do some commentaries or some review contributing our view to the topic. So it depends also in the case you are free to write review articles for any in any subject, but I would suggest you to focus always on one or two subjects. I mean, for example, we are focusing also with you, Alireza, on vector-borne diseases of pets because we work a lot on vector-borne disease on pets, and then more specifically on those of zoonotic concern. So this is something that we should consider.
Thank you very much.
There is another question from Facebook, from Vincenzo Rallo. This an interesting question because I also would like your reply. How can I find the funds to publish a paper if I am a PhD student?
Vincenzo, this is my question, or the daily question, how to find. I would answer you have to find it, or I may answer you have to find any topic that is in the interest or could be of interest for pharmaceutical companies or research bodies or private companies that are interested in your work, or it's difficult. That's difficult. That's really difficult because science is not so democratic in some way. Even if you should know that we have waivers for publication from researchers coming from low-income countries, like developing countries or countries that have embargoes, commercial embargoes. That's happening in parasites and vectors, as well as will happen in a new journal that has been launched just the 1st of November, that is current research in parasitology and tick-borne diseases. I am one of the editors, founders editor for that, and the advisory editor now with Aneta Costadinova and other colleagues. And we put some ethics in the rules for publication by supporting people who has no money or who has no funds for that. But it's a complicated, it's a really complicated situation, and it's difficult for me to answer your question.
Thank you. There is not a question. I believe one Ali Halajan, always from Iran, again from Iran. I believe one of the global issue currently is the matter of many fake and unrecognized journals that are born almost every day. This is his consideration. I would ask you how we can classify and define a good journal for our papers.
Based on the impact factor, based on number of citation, based on the editorial board as well, because people who has a reputation, who has a reputation will never be part of an editorial board for the fake journals or bad journals that do not do a good science. And you know, I am weekly invited to be part of boards, but I would say 98% of the cases I refuse. I have not time, and I don't want to put my name affiliated with this kind of journals. So the editorial board could be the first screening, then the article that have been published previously, because you see that they publish sometimes very bad articles, bad journals. And I would suggest you to publish one article less, but do it better in a good journal than to publish 2-3 more articles and write them and publish them in bad journals. Because nobody, if I read a journal that I don't know, and I mean, it's from some companies, some editorial, some publishers that are just fishing publishers, I do not read them at all. And I cannot say and cannot tell you some examples, but we have many.
Ali Alajan writes, I'm originally from Iran, but I'm working in South Africa since 10 years. Okay, Ali. From Paolo Petio, can I submit my article to multiple publishers at the same time, or it is not recommended?
No, it's not. The problem is that it's not recommended. It's not allowed at all. It's illegal.
Yes, and just looking if there are any more questions. Seems not. So I have the last question for you for today. So something that you did not touch. If my manuscript, if our manuscript is refused, what could we do? Just give us some advice, because it's something that happens very often.
Yeah, me too. The first thing is to be humble enough to read through the reviewers' comments and try to change, amend the manuscript. This is the first. The second one is to reconsider the results. Depends why it was rejected, but for sure reconsider all your ideas, the ideas you put there, and what you did. I mean, reconsider and redo it, like Marcos Jairo did many times pizza, pasta, before having a good pizza.
Okay, we have another question from the classroom. Anna, please. Okay.
Okay. Another question that people often make is what to write in the conclusions without repeating what already said in the discussion, in those papers in which you have discussion and then conclusions. The main difference or the, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. In the conclusions, you should have, you should report the overall conclusions, the future perspectives of your research, and based on the discussions. So you have the results, you discuss them, and then you have an overall conclusion on the whole manuscript. I would suggest you in the conclusions just to address two topics. The first one is the title, be adherent to the title, and then to the aims of your study. Focus on that, and based on the results and the discussion, you can conclude something that is broader, which has an open perspectives. Also, you could put something of personal, some future research needed for sure, but explain why they are needed, because we need to, as mentioned before, we need always to have research. You have to focus on which are the main needs for the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Domenico, we have done it. So it was a very nice experience. We have many people watching on Facebook, more than 120, plus our classroom. A lot of comments. So it was a very, very fine experience. And I hope that next time we will meet together here in Sardinia. And so thank you very much, and see you here or in Bari very soon. Okay.
Thank you to you, Antonio, and to all students and all researchers. And for sure, if you need anything, any suggestion, any comments, you can contact me. You could contact me directly or through Antonio Arcasi. Grazie.
Many thanks. Ciao. Buona giornata.
Ciao.
Thank
A te.
you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.